All right, everybody. Thank you for joining. I just want to do a quick mic check, make sure on my side, you guys, can you hear me okay? Good. Okay. Well, welcome to this webinar. We're super excited to have you here today on talking about how we leverage voice integration with ServiceNow's virtual agent and driving a lot faster results to our customers and to our customers. Yeah. So very happy to be here. Safe harbor, you just pass that through real quick. That's one of the things we've got to put up there. You guys know the drill. Don't make any decisions based on the things we present to you today. Quick introduction of the presenters today. I'm Colter Hammer. I have been working at ServiceNow for about 4 years now. And in that time, I've had a lot of time to work with some of our illustrious partners, 3C Logic, who is here today, they'll have them introduce themselves in a moment. I've been around the contact center world for quite some time and spent a lot of time in integrations with our voice and voice strategy. So just wanted to make sure that we, Guillaume, if you want to go, and Reuven, just introduce yourselves real quick.
Yeah, Colter, thanks for having us. My name is Guillaume, G for short. I operate here at 3C Logic. Been here for a number of years, been in customer service for as long as I can remember within the technology space. I run our alliances program, among other things. So, of course, our long-standing relationship with ServiceNow, certainly being among those those responsibilities. And then, Reuven, you want to do a quick introduction?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, guys. So Reuven Rosenthal, I'm a senior solutions engineer here at 3C Logic, and basically I specialize in the way that we integrate contact center with the ServiceNow platform. I actually used to be a ServiceNow developer, did implementations before coming to 3C Logic and sort of working with the vendor side of things. But yeah, very excited to present to you guys sort of what we've been working on.
All right. Thanks, guys. We're gonna jump right into it and start talking about the integration strategies here. So I'm going to turn this over to Guillaume and have him start out. I'm really here now for comedic relief, so I will show up every once in a while and say a few things and then step out. But G, if you want to get going,
we can. Now, I think we were going to open up with a quick poll, Colter.
That is right. Everybody, I'm learning how to do polls. Just really quick, we want to know how many of you are using ServiceNow Virtual Agent today or planning to in the near future if you're not using it today. Oh, wow, here we go. We've got a bunch of results coming in right now. Can you guys see that on the screen?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah,
I think you have to end the poll, but yeah.
We're ending it now. Ready. Now can you see it? Yeah. Well, anyway, it looks like about 35% of the respondents came in as already using our virtual agent. About 18% are not using it today, and then there's 47% of everybody out there who is planning on implementing virtual agent in the next 6 to 12 months. So that is really good. That's a good news.
All right. Well, I mean, I think that's a good start because obviously we're going to be talking about ServiceNow Virtual Agent today. So again, Guillaume here, we at 3C Logic specialize in voice capabilities, contact center, and so forth. So we're going to talk explicitly about how we've gone and voice enabled a virtual agent and what might be some of the use cases you could hope to achieve by merging what we bring to the table and, of course, what ServiceNow offers natively. What I thought would help is just spend a little bit of time, not an exhaustive amount of time, just setting a little bit of the stage for where and why this might be relevant for those of you who have joined us today. And then we're going to do a live demonstration, which Reuven is going to lead. So what I find interesting when you talk about customer experience is that, interestingly enough, despite the sheer amount of technologies that have been released over the last few decades, in that same time period, you would think that customer experience or employee experience has gotten better. The reality is, and very likely we can all relate, is that it's actually in decline and at its worst point in the last 5 years. So if you look at a most recent study and you compare 2018 to 2022, people were happier 5 years ago than they are now in terms of the types of service that they're getting from organizations, which personally came a bit across as a shock when preparing for today's discussion. But then again, having been, and we are all customers, not necessarily a surprise once you actually give it a little bit of thought. What's happening in tandem, of course, and we're all privy to this, is that there's this massive shift to digital transformation. If we look at it in terms of sheer spend, last year alone, 2022, worldwide DX spend was in the vicinity of 1.8 trillion. And is expected to rise to 3.4 in the next couple of years. What's very interesting and telling is that within that 1.8 trillion spend, 300 billion of it was specifically spent on engagement and customer service investments around omni-channel engagement and things of that nature. Because at the end of the day, organizations need to optimize how they engage with consumers, especially if consumers are increasingly less happy with customer service than they have been. What's interesting is when you look at channels, and obviously customers have different channels that they can choose by which to interface or connect with their vendors, whether it's email, chat, and so forth. Among them, voice, telephony still remains the primary, if not tied with email, form of communication that individuals typically default to. Now, of course, digital transformation is trying to some extent have an impact on that because it's not the most operationally efficient way to provide services, especially when there are self-service options that are increasingly being made available. But that being said, telephony is actually on the rise. Voice channel, in terms of its usage, is actually going up. It's not declining. And if you look behind the research a little bit, what we're finding is while people and organizations are investing in digital transformation, while more options in terms of how to self-service are being provided, at the same time, people are actually voicing more issues with organizations than they ever have. About 3 in 4 individuals now of those surveyed will claim that they've had a major issue with a provider or a service in the last year. Back in 2017, it was something like 56%. And back in 2020, it was somewhere around 66%. So more and more people have more and more issues. And it's an entirely different topic as to why they're having so many issues across the different services they might be leveraging. But it is something that all organizations have to contend with. And of course, it's driving more engagements with customers, not less. We're going to talk about how you can also help deflect those experiences or those requests so that you as an organization can scale despite the fact that there's a rise in number of inquiries. Before we continue, I think, Coulter, there was going to be a poll that we were going to try on this topic.
Yeah, that is a staggering number that you just threw up there, or a couple of those that, you know, as people go and just go through the poll right now, answer those questions as far as integrating ServiceNow to your contact center or voice provider. It doesn't need to be contact center specifically. And also whether or not you've integrated that to a virtual agent as well. So while you're doing that, interesting statistics, G, that you put up there, because you would think, and if you've looked at it over the past 2 decades, everybody has predicted voice is in the decline, and we might as well just move away from voice and just have digital strategies altogether. When in reality, what we're looking at now is this idea of their voice is still a strategy, and when you're inconsistent in that strategy or inconsistent in your experience across the board, what happens is that article that you shared that poll from, or that information from, actually talked about customers wanting to seek revenge. It was like, that was they put it in quotation marks, they saying they were seeking revenge. I thought that was an interesting choice of words for customers coming back, and the way that they're so upset about something that they're actually going out and making sure that people know about it. So I think we're probably good on the poll. We can share those results. So yes, it looks like we have quite a few who have integrated a contact center, about half that haven't at this point, and some that are planned for the future. So as far as integrating with a virtual agent, it looks like less of you have actually integrated to a virtual agent with voice, which is something we're going to be focusing on today. So
Great. So obviously, not surprised by the results, but also very telling. So you're in the right place for today's conversation. The fact of the matter, since we're talking about interactions, right, is Coulter, we are not advocates of every request has to be solved via a phone call. But at the same time, we all have to recognize that as organizations, we don't necessarily inherently control which channel a customer may opt to choose as their preferred form of engagement. And of course, the type of channel they choose may correlate or typically correlates to the severity or the complexity or just the emotional aspect that they're tying to the inquiry, right? So if it's something like a password reset, you'd hope they'd use a digital form, knowledge portal, self-service. But if it's something related to your health, for example, or taxes, right, you might be more inclined to call. The reality is, though, is when you query a lot of organizations that we work with, there is still a substantial amount of voice requests that come in that typically should be self-serviced. Like a password reset request, or just getting the latest update on a case or a ticket that customer may have recently submitted. How can you help deflect people that are calling about known issues? There's an outage in your neighborhood. Okay, well, I don't need 50 people to call me about that outage. I just need to deflect those individuals after we've established that there's a major issue in your area, so that your presence in the queue doesn't affect the people who are calling about other services, right? Because the more people you have waiting for services, regardless of your type of inquiry, the greater global impact it has on the customer experience, typically in terms of hold time and things of that nature. And then there's other opportunities. Can we send you information proactively, like a link to a portal via SMS or an article that may address your issue or your request, again, without necessarily taking up valuable agent resources? And that's where voice enablement of virtual agent can come in, leveraging what you've built in ServiceNow or plan to, for some of you who don't have yet VA, and how can you extend it beyond just digital interactions, but voice enable that experience? So very quickly, in a nutshell, how does the voice enablement of ServiceNow Virtual Agent work? Well, imagine you're Bob here calling in. And what's going to happen is Bob is going to have an incoming call, and it's going to go through 3C Logic's IVR or Interaction Manager to help process the call. And if you have developed and integrated the ServiceNow Virtual Agent with, in this case, 3C Logic, what will happen is it can attempt to first take a request and attempt to self-service it. So it'll attempt to send it using ServiceNow's natural language understanding. So it's going to allow you to speak your issue. And ServiceNow's natural language engine is going to try to understand what is the intent of your request. So as opposed to going through a long, exhausting menu, what are you calling about? I'm calling about my computer being down. Okay, maybe that's a hardware issue. So ServiceNow is going to process that through the workflows that you've built within Virtual Agent and ultimately come back with a response. And 3C Logic will be the speech layer around this experience, right? So based on ServiceNow's virtual agent and workflow processing, it may, or it's going to try to provide a resolution to Bob. Now, I'm sure we've all had different experiences with, we'll call them bots in general. If for some reason, the virtual agent, ideally you've solved it, in which case the virtual agent can then close out the call and Bob can move about his day. But if for some reason there's a need to have an agent intervene at some point in the conversation, you can actually then transfer it to a live call center agent with the context of what the bot was able to achieve up until that point before it was transferred to, in this case, Jason, our fake live agent here. So again, it's an attempt for deflection and self-service without it being an end state. In other words, it has the option to fall back to go to a live resource if need be. But again, if you can deflect 10, 20% of your call volume, maybe more, that can add meaningful value to the entire customer experience for anybody reaching out to your organization via the phone channel. So with that, what I'm going to do is seeing is believing. Let me stop sharing my screen. And I'm going to hand it over to Reuven here, who's going to actually give you an introduction to just what that experience could look like. How might you build it? What would be the outcome? And then we'll field some questions. Reuven?
Awesome. All right, guys, let me go ahead and share here. So those of you who joined us for our Conversational Interfaces Academy a couple weeks ago, this is going to look pretty familiar to you. But essentially what I'm going to do here is show you guys what it's like to sort of build the virtual agent for voice type of experience, sort of what steps are entailed. I'll actually go through and build a couple of components and start building this topic from scratch at the end, because for sake of time, I'll do some cooking show magic and sort of show you what the final product will look like. And then I'll call in so you guys can get an idea of what the experience is like, right? So what you have here, within Virtual Agent Designer, there's a couple of different properties we're going to set up before we start building anything, right? The two things, one is we want to make sure that whatever topic you're building in with voice, that you're ready to go with NLU and that you're set up for the right channels, right? So if you want this topic to be available for voice, you want to make sure when you go to who can access this topic, contact center is enabled, right? And additionally, within it, you want to make sure NLU is enabled on that topic and that you have all the utterances that you might need so that when someone's speaking into their phone, we can capture this, and the ServiceNow NLU engine is going to basically detect which topic this person should be directed to within a certain confidence band, right? So this is a big part of what makes the engine go, so to speak, is tweaking these utterances, seeing what users are saying, updating the model, right? To make sure that, hey, you can build the most beautiful topics in the world, but you want to make sure people can get to those topics, right? And the topic itself is where the magic happens, so to speak, where, you can do a lot of automation. You can create your different tickets. You can send people text messages. And so I actually saw on the Q&A panel, and I actually tend to agree with this, what people don't love is sitting on hold waiting for an agent for, who knows, mystery amount of time, right? This day and age, like nobody really has time to sit on hold for 45 minutes, right? You'd much rather describe your issue, have a ticket placed, and then someone can proactively reach out to you when they're able to get to it, right? So what I'm going to do today, guys, and I'm going to start building this, is essentially, this is going to be a classic ITSM use case. Someone calls in, they're having an issue with some kind of hardware. And so we're going to build out a flow where they can sort of describe their issue, categorize their issue, and we're going to ultimately create a ticket for them, send them a text message. Okay. So within this component library you're seeing on the left over here, certain of these are supported for voice, certain are not, right? And it's honestly pretty obvious when you think about it. Things like a file picker, you can't have an attachment when you're talking through the phone, right? So we're just going to stick to the ones that are available to us. I'll start with the static choice here. So what I'm going to do, someone calls in, they have a hardware issue. I want to get the category, right? So I'm going to say, hey, I'm going to ask basically for a prompt, which is we're going to use text-to-speech services to read aloud this prompt to the caller. And then we're going to allow them to select from this choice list of options, and they'll speak into the phone to essentially select one of those choices, right? So let's say, okay, it sounds like you are having a hardware problem. Can you provide the category? All right. And let's just say, typical hardware categories, we're going to go laptop, mobile phone. Let's say it's something else, we'll give them another, right? From here, you may want to do a decision tree, right? So based off of whichever one they chose, same as you would do for a chat topic, guys, based on whatever they chose, you create a couple branches, and it's going to go down that branch, right? So let's say I were to select mobile phone. I'm going to create another static choice, and I can say, okay, well then let's see, what kind of mobile device is it? Is it an iPhone? Is it an Android? Is it something else? So I'll just add other one more time, right? I need a prompt as well, so I can say, please provide which type of device you're calling about. So now we have the categories. So let's say someone says mobile device. Someone might say, okay, it's an iPhone. Now you have that. You can basically, we're gathering all the context that we can because we're going to eventually create an incident based off of this data, right? But what's going to be really helpful and ultimately drive a lot of call deflection is allowing that caller to describe their issue before that ticket. So when the ticket is created, in the description of the ticket, we're going to have that issue outlined, right? So what I'll do here is I'll, say yes or no. Hey, you want add some additional context. You can say, hey, would you like to provide some additional context for the agent regarding your issue? So this is a Boolean, right? So after this one, the caller is basically going to say yes or no, whether they want to do provide that additional context. And let's say they did. Now we're going to do an open-ended text field, or I can say, okay, describe the issue. It's just going to basically say, hey, okay, go ahead, describe the issue, right? And then this is, so now basically everything we've done so far is gathering the context. Now we're going to go ahead, use that context to create a ticket. So I can say, okay, I want to create a record in the incident table. I want to fill in the person who's the incident is for. So I can actually use the variables from this virtual agent flow to pull that in here. So I can say, okay, the user who is the caller here. I can also put in the description of the incident that's provided from the context we gathered earlier. So describe the issue. Maybe I need the category. So I can get, once again, the category there, right? I'll save that. So now that we've created the incident, what we can do is offer them up a text message, right? And not only are you going to, let's say you can describe your issue, but you obviously can't post a screenshot through the phone, right? So how do we resolve that part of it? Let's send them a text message so that they can easily hop on the portal, attach a screenshot, give that agent all of the context that they need to solve the issue, right? So what I'm going to do here is put in a record action. What we're going to do is, this is going to be a send SMS action. We're actually 3C logic as part of every single voice enablement of virtual agent. We will also install a SMS utility within the ServiceNow instance, so that all I have to do is basically put in a message, right? Here is a URL to access the ticket you created from calling the help desk, right? I'm not going to put in the URL here, but you guys can sort of understand that as an example. We also have our own utility context control that we've inserted as part of our virtual agent implementation as well, where if this call does need to go to an agent for whatever reason, we can provide that context to the agent so that when the call comes in, they have everything they need. They have the full conversation history. They're able to service that customer really, really well because they know exactly what's happened when they had their conversation with the bot, right? So this hopefully gives you guys a quick walkthrough of, the citizen developer experience. I haven't had to write a single line of code here. I've gone through basically component by component. But what I'm going to do here, I'm going to pull up from my other screen, basically the fully finished product, right? So you select your category. I have all of the different decision branches in here. And what I'll do here is I'm going to call in. And as I go through the call, I'm actually just going to sort of highlight on the right the prompts and all the different choices that are happening. So you guys can get, follow along essentially with the experience as I talk through it on speakerphone. Okay. So let me go ahead and I'll call in here.
Thank you for calling ServiceNow Help Desk. Can you tell me in a few words the reason for your call?
I'm having issues with my screen on my MacBook Pro.
It sounds like you are having a hardware issue. Can you provide the category of this issue? You can say laptop, mobile phone, or other.
Laptop.
What kind of laptop do you need help with? You can say MacBook Pro, Lenovo, or Surface Book.
MacBook Pro.
To help you out a little better, would you like to provide a description for the help desk to review? Please say yes or no.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I upgraded the operating system on my MacBook Pro, and ever since then, my screen keeps freezing.
I've automatically created a ticket for the help desk to review for your MacBook Pro issue. Would you like me to send you a text message with a link to your ticket on the service portal for tracking purposes? Please say yes or no.
Yes.
You should receive an SMS shortly with a link to the portal. Is there anything else I can assist you with? Please say yes or no.
All righty, guys. So I'm hoping that provided a little insight into what the experience is. In terms of how that looks like in the back end within ServiceNow, a ticket was created, an interaction was created. This isn't the call I just did, but this was one I did earlier today or earlier last week. You can actually see as when you go back and you review the calls that were made to Virtual Agent, you can see the conversation panel on the left and what was said, the entire transcription, sort of what paths people are taking, right? And this can give very valuable insight into, okay, what topics are being heavily used? Where might people be struggling with this? How can I make tweaks, provide more automation, provide more deflection, and ultimately help people out a little better? You can only do that if you have the data. And so that's all posted back into that interaction record. So for the most part, that covers it. I don't know if we got any questions in the chat, but I think this kind of at a very high level provides the end-to-end overview of what the voice enablement looks like on the virtual agent.
Yep. So we've been answering questions here on the fly from a couple of different individuals while you're going through that. I think there's a couple of things to highlight from the questions that we've gotten. So I'll for those that haven't seen the answers. So there were questions about, well, one was a statement about the idea that people don't want to wait on hold or necessarily go through a voice self-service experience. They may just want to raise an issue and then move on, which obviously by default, it just so happened that that's exactly what you showcase as an example here, Reuven, right? So we are not advocating that every conversation you should have to wait on hold and that experience is always going to be the best experience dealing with a voice bot. But there are instances where you can go ahead and submit an issue, as we've done here, build out that workflow and allow the customer to move on about their business without having to have them wait on hold. Again, we're not advocating that high hold times or high call volume is a good thing. We're suggesting that there's an opportunity here to help lower those call volumes or at least triage them so that the ones that actually get to an agent are the ones that require that level of hand-holding and live agent services. There were questions about, which I think one question, Reuven, I think would be an interesting one for you to weigh on, which is, what is the recommended virtual agent maturity before integrating, a voice system with virtual agent? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's definitely voice is an important channel. I think chat is probably a good place to start in terms of the straightforwardness and the use cases that you're able to service, right? It's a digital, we're very much a fan of the digital first approach. It's not digital only, right? So you start with chat. It's almost like a crawl, walk, run type of model, right? Start with chat, get your NLU engine in order, make sure you sort of have everything set up, and then bring in voice so that it's very seamless and you don't have to, set up entirely separate topics and flesh those out for voice because you'll have already done it for chat.
Yep. And I would tend to agree with that response. There was a question also about, would the flow be triggered once the caller is successfully authenticated in the IVR? So if you recall back to that quick little overview diagram, the call first comes into the 3C Logic IVR to even process the call itself. Traditionally, that's an opportunity to authenticate the user. The most common way is to use their incoming phone number. And if that phone number is available and matched in ServiceNow, then by default, you can quickly understand or know who the caller is, what might be any open tickets or cases that they have. And from that point forward, the IVR can determine what might be the most appropriate path to take them or walk them through, which could include, of course, an opportunity for self-service using the virtual agent. So authentication is typically recommended because the more you know about the incoming caller at the beginning, the quicker you can take them through designated experiences, whether it's self-service or live agent, right? Maybe it's the CEO calling and you want them to go to a live individual. It depends on what your requirements are. I see one last question came in here. In the voice example, although you told us your issue was related to your Mac, it still asks you again in the prompt, was that because of the VA topic accuracy?
That's actually a great question. So that has nothing to do with the topic accuracy. It's actually, it's all about entity mapping, right? So virtual agent, for those who are familiar with the NLU side of things, there is the ability to basically take whatever the utterance was and map entities out of that utterance to essentially, I guess, skip certain prompts in certain situations. The topic that I called into just doesn't have entity mapping configured into there, but we could. And so that would be the type of thing where I think you could get a lot of value. If someone says MacBook Pro, we can say, all right, that is a lot. We know MacBook Pro is a laptop, and obviously MacBook Pro aligns directly to that option for that particular question. So you could potentially skip these menus or just confirm to the caller, hey, you are calling about a laptop issue for your MacBook Pro. Yes? Okay, let me skip these two prompts then.
All right, so I'm going to take it back here. So just to recap here, a couple of things, maybe takeaways, since I know that I think it was roughly 60-70% of individuals have an integrated voice or their contact center with ServiceNow at all. And then within the virtual agent, the majority of you who are using VA haven't necessarily pursued this avenue. So there's obviously a lot of opportunity to explore where this could add value for you. But some of the takeaways, one is that on the topic of self-service, for those individuals that are calling, just recognize that there are a lot of things that you can successfully deflect without necessarily impacting the customer experience. But at the same time, not every call should be self-service. So it's being able to sort through and triage where you can afford to address an individual without necessarily leveraging live agents. And then what are those instances or requests that do need to be escalated or prioritized because of the nature of the inquiry or the person or things of that nature. The other is that the quality of service is going to be directly related to the depth of context. This goes a little bit to the question about authentication. The more you know about the caller upfront, the more you can personalize the experience or the type of experience that you might extend to them. And that goes to one of the benefits of integrating a contact center solution with ServiceNow as the primary foundational system of record. If all the information about the individual, past and current cases and tickets about that individual are present and available and accessible to that contact center tool, like you've seen here to some extent with 3C Logic with what we're doing specifically in the context of VA, then you have the opportunity to actually really drive meaningful engagements that ultimately typically will lead to better outcomes. If you don't have that context, ultimately the type of experience you're going to give to individuals is press 1 for support, press 2 for sales, and then you're going to dump everybody into that general population, if you will. And that typically leads to the types of experiences I'm sure all of us have suffered through, which is you get to an agent, you have to repeat your life story, potentially find out that agent is the individual that's skilled to address your issue, only to get transferred, And then, of course, that frustration level typically goes up and up in the process. The other thing is the ease of administration, right? Obviously, with the progress that platforms like ServiceNow, like 3C Logic have made in recent years, you really can enable that citizen developer capability, low code, no code, and so forth. So as you saw in the demonstration, which Coulter was kind enough to highlight, it was in fact live. You quickly saw how Reuven was able to build an experience without necessarily having to provide any type of coding or having that type of coding background to enable those types of experiences. So I think I see, oh, well, last but not least, and then we'll get into some of the questions. For those of you who aren't familiar with 3C Logic, we are one of ServiceNow's leading technology partners. We are listed and among the top listed applications, technology applications on the ServiceNow store. We currently serve ServiceNow customers all over the globe. And it's anything from your IT service desk to your customer support group to your HR service delivery teams and everything in between. So we offer quite a number of capabilities that are out of the box with the different types of ServiceNow SKUs that are out there. Voice enablement of virtual agent is just one thing that we can enable within a broader set of capabilities. But hopefully today gave you a taste of just what the art of the possible might be. And if you care to reach out to us in any way, shape, or form to explore what might be some of your use cases and where we can add value, there'll be our contact information here at the end. Well, in fact, here. But I did see some questions coming in, so let me try and pull those up there. Let's see. How is the phone system connected to ServiceNow? 3C Logic is its own telephony and contact center offering hosted on Amazon Web Services. We have instances all over the world. So we natively, it's our technology when it comes to IVR, CTI enablement, queuing, reporting, call transcription, and things of that nature. So all of that is part of the 3C Logic offering in this context, which is what allows us to provide and basically wrap, in this case, ServiceNow's virtual agent with our speech-enabled technology in a way that leverages what ServiceNow does already very well, but extend it out to a voice-enabled experience. How can this be enabled, or can this be enabled for multilingual voice conversations? Reuven, you want to tackle that one?
Sure.
Can this be enabled for multilingual?
Yeah, multilingual. As long as you have your NLU engine within ServiceNow set up for those other languages, we support it right along with it, right? So 3C Logic will provide the text to speech and speech to text in that designated language, and then ServiceNow will do the NLU in that designated language. So as long as that language is supported by the ServiceNow NLU engine, you should be covered.
And if it's not, of course, we have alternative options as well, using, for example, Amazon or Google as alternative means if we need to extend beyond perhaps what's natively available within ServiceNow. We have a question: how does 3C Logic compare to Amazon Connect? We don't typically, out of respect for our competitors, answer those questions on webinars. But if you're exploring right now and would like to have that conversation in detail, we'd be happy to have that one-on-one. Feel free to reach us out at ServiceNow3clog.com, and we can help sort of provide that comparison level. I will say, for what it's worth, that I would argue that we most likely have one of the most ServiceNow-centric offerings out there compared to some of the alternatives that you might consider. And let me see if there are any additional questions here. I don't think so. So with that, I think we already covered the Q&A. So again, if you wish to reach out to 3C Logic, feel free to email us at servicenow@3clogic.com. You can also reach us at info@3clogic.com. For what it's worth, I did mention in one of the responses, we will be a sponsor at ServiceNow's upcoming Knowledge 23 event. We'll be hosting a booth. We will also have a couple theater sessions, one on the topic of voice bots, that will include what we've done for virtual agent, as well as some of the other alternatives available. So come meet us. If you have questions about what we've discussed today, contact center capabilities and SMS in general, and everything in between, myself, Reuven, and a whole host of 3C Logic members will be on site, and we'd love nothing more than an opportunity to chat with you and answer your questions. Coulter, I'll turn it back over to you.
No, you've done a great job wrapping it up there. I'm glad we got all the questions answered. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We appreciate your time today and for spending a few minutes with us to learn a little bit more about our integrations with voice and our virtual agent. So we hope to see you at Knowledge. It's in middle of May. If you haven't looked at that yet, or you're still making a decision, hopefully this pushed you over the edge and you can come over and take a look at what 3C's built in some of their showcases. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Thank Coulter.
Thank you.